it's really amazing. We're really encouraging people to tune into the shows that you've done, we've been doing, that everything's sort of in a bit of a sequence and everything, But it's amazing because anyone's observation of any moment only can have meaning as a result of having observation before and afterward. And when people make decisions about things, it's really good that we can have a sense of what happened before this moment and then what happens after also. And that way then we're sort of more able to see the whole thing and be more in our totality. But just because there's a sequence of things that happen and then there's successive sort of points of observation, because things can happen in a similar time, that's called ad hoc reasoning, and that can be fallacious because just simply because something happens in a similar time frame doesn't mean necessarily there's any cause and effect of things, you see. Yeah. And then many, many things have occurred perhaps for something to come to be the way that it is. But everybody could know that a lot of these judicial courts and things are not really judicial courts of anything that's of any record much, and that even that record could be kept somewhere. That record cannot necessarily have been brought forward, and that sort of thing. You see, you've got a lot of things going on where the judicial system certainly is being controlled, and even people's reasoning can be ever more solid by being able to know what's happened before. That's created the condition somewhat, what's the sequence of events that's occurred before something. So when somebody could witness something occurring, you could only know that it's a pattern if you could see it happen twice. And once you've seen it happen twice, well, then you can really know that that's a pattern. Yeah. But just neither sequencing nor sort of any happenedness, just happening on any successive points of observation in our mind. It's sort of like an imaginary time scale. But reality really is not this, that, now, nor then. All of that is sort of just equivalent to mental mentation and things. But and thinking. Childhood trauma is really one of the major conditions of mood and anxiety disorders, as we've been talking about. And epidemiological studies do show that early adverse experiences and things that children have really do cause an increased risk of depression and people feeling that they other than are powerful inside, and also like feeling overwhelmed. So when somebody lets a breath out, like they'll go, oh, like that, that is sort of like internal dialogue is underneath that. And we can touch our lips, and then that sort of causes us to be soothed and smoothed. And these are all things that we do, which are accessing cues. And we can touch our lips, and that is an auditory sort of nature and things. And there could be a lot of internal dialogue going on and chatter. And that chatter, it really is not eye awareness as it can be. But that all childhood traumas and things that's locked before a person could really be able to reason can have be sort of a deeper, more and in a more recessed sort ofness. And then persistent sensitization of the central nervous system can have been going on, where sympathetic nervous system was stimulated to fear, flight, fright, fight, sort of underneath everything. and that can have been a feeling state that can have been anchored and then continuously been reminded of as a result of all sorts of thought process and things. So early life stress really is equivalent to the induction of more long-lived hyperactive and hypoactive, meaning hyperactive meaning excessive and hypo meaning not enough activity and reactivity of corticotropins and corticotropic releasing factor, and then these substances like that release cortisol, adrenocorticotropic hormone, epinephrine, norepinephrine, which are stress hormones, do acidify, and that can have been a state that had occupied a person underneath everything, and that needs to be like an icebreaker, and something needs to be stopped, and a new program needs to be fitted in more, which is emptiness of your thinking and relaxedness of your shoulders and this sort of thing, and more, of course. But child mistreatment kind of all of those cases at the moment. There's a lot of victims of the child abuse laws and things, and all these cases are just anything that's created gets underway, and they're traded on the stock market as derivatives, and people are gambling on that, and that's the new Ponzi scheme and things, where money is being created from a bad debt being bundled and mortgaged and sold and traded, and then downstream, of course, is a child mistreatment because there's no courts of record properly like it's supposed to be, and there is no legal remedy offered, and then who really cares about that in an eugenic pattern of wanting to cull the population. So that there's no remedy for retaliation at all, and that there's no constitutional legal remedy except in Uniform Commercial Code and enforcement of private contract law and things. And that's where people can have their common law remedy. They could learn how to do this. That's how we used to always do things. But early parental loss is equivalent to a person ending up sort of more bipolar, and then the people around, for instance, Dakota, are just sort of lying to him, and he even thinks perhaps I'm dead. It's so bad, isn't it, right? But I have to do what I can to enforce more private contract, and I've done what I can not to create any controversy about all of this, but it just is moving along, and apparently it was just put in court that I'd abandoned the kid, my boy, which is just total bulldust. Anybody who is listening to me, who knows me, knows that's just absolute bulldust. See? But it's people who have no knowledge, and ethne is broken, and then the only person who really is giving information is somebody who really has a bent. Yeah. So, anyway, but alterations in neurotransmitters systems certainly have a greater increased response of stress, and certainly child mistreatment and that sort of thing, and then all of this being traded on the stock market really ends up, as we're sort of saying, more in a bipolar type of conditions and things. But eye awareness, the opposite of truth, doesn't exist, because there really is only existence, and this is equivalent not to any required cause having to be, and locality of describedness, with sort of basic sort of reference points. It's just a locality of describedness with basic points of reference, that's all. And that can have occurred in a timeline of something, and that simply, of course, it's not necessary of any cause or effectness of one thing affecting another. But the block to I is the mind itself, and people sort of knowing, or they're thinking of their knowingness, and then their knowingness can cause them other than to be accepting of something which is happening where a person is being healed up. But sudden moments sort of standstill, of the totality of all of this, really, this is equivalent to I-aware. And I guess, I've been through many shipwrecks, and wherever I've been, I sort of really do what I can to trade the ballast of the boat where I am, and it's an unexpectedness of an abyss opened in front, and unexpected sort of travel and things a bit, and this sort of life being, and eventually, of course, you really do long for the quiet and the peace of stillness and things. Yeah, but that this is something which is possible to find inside as somebody's really on the road. The reality excludes non-reality, and so that non-reality is not an opposite of reality at all. Reality completely excludes what is not real. But the keys, good keys to remember in high awareness, is that craving really is a center of delusion, and where persons can be not whole in themselves, that can have created craving, and that even thinking itself, which wasn't rational, can have been state-specific with aversion. So all memory, learning, and behavior is state-specific, and little things that people are reminded of can have caused them to other than be remained in a whole and pattern state. And that pictures and feelings and sounds and sights and things could have been acting as a trigger and triggering a memory, and created that craving because of a state specificity of something not being whole or total, and then having triggered ever more internal chatter and disruption to ease. And I-awareness is stopping all that, recognizing the indulgence of all of that. But long life, having a good long life, is equivalent to a parasympathetic nervous system, which is more baseline function primarily of a relaxedness and letting go, and then with only few sort of sympathetic nervous system stimulations, which is sort of getting ready for fear, flight, fright, or fight sort of response or something. But people living in a world where the opposite of that exists are not other than going to have a good long life. So the body is the mind's experience of itself. We perceive everything through the use of our body, and it's uncommon, powerful sort of beautiful gamma rays are emitted as the person has both right and left hemispheres synchronizing as one. Both your hemispheres of your brain are synchronizing as one, and you have a greater amplitude of electricity available in the whole of your body. Yeah. You see, but healing learned helplessness is really having a deep understanding and having more 24/7 eye-aware chipping away, because negative counts a double as what a positive does. And so in eye-awareness, you have to have this eye-aware intention 24/7 as it is, until such a time it is that this becomes fully what your original condition is again. But the causes of that sufferedness is sort of really all sorts of inherent contradictions in thinking process. So, for instance, if someone knows that they have to get rid of the belly, they can have conversations about being afraid of losing weight, or they could be losing all the fat weight round their neck and losing their chicken neck or something, and they could be concerned that their face doesn't look as fat or puffy, and they're losing the fat underneath their skin, and their face is looking younger again. And they have all sorts of things to throw in there to tell you that people around them who are fat and old or whatever, and the person who's healing up is apparently losing weight, they're losing too much weight or something, or the person will say that they won't notice that they have a huge belly still, but it's being reduced, but they'll be really, really concerned that they have to buy new clothes and things. So the pattern of somebody who's doing that is extremely indulgent, and they are indulging in things all the time, which is not uncommon, is it? People are sabotaging themselves with all sorts of thinking, which doesn't really help anybody at all, or they could just be going over the same thing over and over and over again and not necessarily be able to exit. But learned helplessness is really something which we really do need to care very much about. And, for instance, my boy might be asking all the time, what is up with me? But there's no answer, you see, because he's being kept cloistered. And so the causes of sufferedness is all separatedness and people interfering in other people's lives and creating that deep separatedness so people cannot necessarily be with their family. So that's one thing. And then the other cause of a sufferedness is all sorts of ways that people could have thought that they other than are connected in their being, and then what to do about that. And then other causes of sufferedness is instability and not having ease of ability to maintain your internal homeostasis. And then other areas can be really to do with your preferred mode of sorting information. It could be actually having gone toward pain versus having moved away, or it can have not been or empty of having moved toward pleasure, but that it could have even been moving away from something that would be pleasurable. So it's like, wow, you know. So these are preferred modes of sorting information that can have been there, which is aversive programming, and where there was a not approach, but away and outside of, and that is more painful, and not an approach of toward, but avoidance. When preferred modes of sorting information, where you're sorting for things, focusing on what makes sense versus what doesn't make sense, or what fits about what's said versus what absolutely doesn't fit at all. You know, it's sort of opposite. So people can be responding to each other in congruent ways, or just looping and going over the same stuff, or doing a cross sort of a stitch, and polarizing. And where somebody can have had a pattern of dissociatedness more inside, or looping and going over the same thing over and over again and not exiting, that all comes from physiology which is other than integrated and congruent. And integrated and congruent physiology is more as you're in your playful state, and you actually are able to remain more in your playful being. But how can you do that if you're on the phone all the time, non-stop, 24/7 when you're awake, or you've got something you're staring at all the time, non-stop, or something, you know? We can be relaxed of our shoulders and relaxed of our tummy. We can empty our thinking, and we can focus on how we are powerful to get things done, and we can be allowing to observe, to see things unfold, and we can be focused on more I awareness, being aware that there's a lot of learned helplessness where people have turned off. They haven't. They're not really necessarily focused on what they could do, Lukey. Yeah, what we can do. But worrying of the future and regretting of the past, and being in worrying of the future or regretting of the past is equivalent to really sort of blame. And I mean, even if you do what you can not to, it's sort of like just blame, and it's blame and present sort of obstructedness or timeless obstructedness, and it's a blame present constructed in the brain when people are focused on a worry of the future or a regret of the past. So wherever that is, would have been the response, somebody's response to things going on, that can have other than been in I awareness. Because as you are remained in I awareness, the prefrontal cortex is open, and you're relaxed on your shoulders. You focus on what you can do versus what you can't do. You focus on what the outcome is versus what the problem is. And I awareness is as 50% of yourself is empty and 50% of yourself is caring. And this 50% of yourself is this invisible being of your unborn self, an uncreated self fully, which is part of yourself, you know. And this is eternal, and this is the seed of I, and then M is centering around that, and M slowing down in its vibration, and this is the body, and the body is caring, and you're caring, and this is it. That's all. I am is equivalent to God, and otherwise there is no knowledge of knowing of nothing. It doesn't have to be. It just if you can be simply empty of yourself, we can be always having the heart guide the tongue. But worrying of the future and regret of the past, and having been that way, can have just been a bit of an indulgence. One needs to look at that and clear it away and reduce it and chip it away to be reduced to nothing. But to be in I awareness, you have to really be in your prefrontal cortex, and you only are in your prefrontal cortex as you have interest, and you are in your interest, in being in your interest, and having in your pleasure and care of your pleasure, and remain more in this state. And this is an outward lived meditation, because this allows you to be more remained in your prefrontal cortex area, and the neurology and the neurological research that I did at New York University shows this really clearly in qualitative research in the 80s and 90s. But as the person remains more in virtue and what's virtuous and mindfulness, getting things done which is put in front of you for the sake of it and not for something else, this is what mindfulness is. And wisdom is being able to say no to harmful things. We're able to be in our frontal cortex. But if we're hiding from all virtue, or we cannot be too mindful, or we really aren't being of any wisdom, typically that's a state specificity of amygdala, tegmentum, and aversive programming in the brain. But as one is living in I awareness, Lukey, we're living in integrity, and it's a real cooling of any fire, of any hatedness or any greed, that it's possible really for someone in this state to really be able to see through what would have been confused, to know what to do where one is, and having knowledge as to what to do versus not knowing is really liberating, and having a deeper understanding of what to do to go forward, where one is, or what one has to do, But learned helplessness really can be cleared away in eye awareness because as you can be having a focus on virtue, which is very important. This is your meditation. It's just like knowing how to walk correctly or how to sleep and have wakefulness, have rest and activity. But learned helplessness can be being cleared away more by being focused in virtue and having mindfulness and wisdom. And then in virtue, you have the ability to be able to regulate things more and stay in negotiation and open communication. And as you're mindful, getting things done for its sake and not for something else, learning can really be occurring because you're so open and everything. And then it's possible to be able to say no to harmful things because learning has occurred, and we have a better ability to be able to have selectivity and coming from choice. I wonder if it's possible maybe as modal operators of possibility in front of things said versus you must, you will, you can't, you won't, don't, try, and but, and things. But we were one, and then we can have been two, and it's possible for a person to feel themselves coming back into one again inside, and take time for this to be happening. But once a child, you were really once a child worthy of care and beauty, and you still are. This is true today. What's true today that you once were, which you still are, is what's best is for this little person. And still to this day, what's best is for this little person. See? And progression really is along more a nurtured awakening in yourself. You know, so we progress as a result of our ability to.
It seems that Dr. Job is not on mute. You know, it's possible that he was
you
done.
There, mate?
Oh, there you are. Hey.
You there?
You're
Can
back.
you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know how far where we went then.
It was only like 10 seconds.
Oh, well, the world sort of really is on the edge of a razor on the outside of itself. And when people are focused out there thinking they could get something done, it may not happen at all. You have to really take charge and take action where you are. But if you could be relied, perhaps somebody else might do that. I don't know, but it can. But in eye awareness, you're equivalent to this beautiful Olympic athlete in your mind, and the body is the mind's experience of itself. We perceive everything through the use of our body and how relaxed, how quiet, how much we care for our body and our children and ourselves and as the people of the earth. But the key points really, Lukey, are to remember in eye awareness and that once you were a child worthy of care, that you can remember this and that you still are this beautiful little person. And you have an Olympic athleteness of your mind in your care for yourself and others this way. But key points can be, people should really be able to change their mind and keep the change. That's the best thing we can do. We should have ease of ability to be able to use our own thought only, and for this thought to be positive and beneficial, to be truthful, mutually beneficial. It's possible for us to be focused on virtue we've been talking a bit about, which is good. Mindfulness, which is getting things done for the sake of itself, and having perfect detachment. And wisdom, we've been talking about, which is really saying no to harmful things, and having these three pillars, virtuousness, mindfulness, and wisdom as pillars. Interest is really, we've been talking about this in neurology, interest and pleasure create whole brain functioning, and aversion and inhibition and dissociatedness creates limited mind function. And people should get out of others' way and stop interfering in their lives. That's so wrong, you see. And that's what's occurring for my boy. You have people really interfering in his life, not telling him the truth at all, and not even being truthful with me as his daddy. And then you have people just wanting to shut others out and not ever caring to know what's gone on in the past or anything. You know? And that's a world at the moment which needs to be broken. That's a very serious impasse, you see, yeah. But learned helplessness really is looking at faces that you can see around you wherever you are, and I think that I could see faces that are tired, faces that care for relief, you know. I can see faces of hope, but I can see faces of strain and disappointment painted on the faces of people, of worriedness, frustratedness, sorrow and grief, and then even the faces of our candidates before us masked and not a real playfulness at all, actually. So, gee, what a shame, eh? But learned helplessness really is very important because people are not necessarily helping themselves. And you, where you are, you can see chaos around you. You should take charge. That's so very important. And I'm giving you permission really to take charge, you know, where somebody isn't in charge, you know. But you think that perhaps the world is sophisticated out there, and it's not. And you have this deep sophistication inside. Yeah. So the subtle loneliness and hurt and anger, you know, it causes the orbital muscle of the mouth to be pressed down and pressed. It thins the lips over time as they become pressed together more and more, and people end up with a droopy sort of like top lip. Yes. Little by little, if they really are upset more, the bottom lip gets pushed out more, you know. But the corrugata supercilia, which causes the brows to be knitted together, become furrowed. People end up with lines always raising their eyebrows perpetually in vision, letting you know that they're always doing something inside. So their faces always perpetually doing things, and that is like a window into the internal matrix of the mind, really. You can see people always having to sometimes be holding on to something, always in their hands, or you can have people always having to pick or something continuous activity non-stop whilst they're living. And these are examples of learned helplessness having occurred. And the specified cure we've been talking about, mate, this is eye awareness and learning about whole brain functioning and practicing eye awareness and whole brain functioning, you know. Whole brain functioning really is equivalent to brain synchronization and integration. And 33% of our brain is the prefrontal cortex, and you're only getting in there as your result of interest, right? And all memory, learning, and behavior is state-specific. If you've got interest and pleasure, then you're going to be engaging more whole brain patterning. That's right. And if you would have allowed something else to be there, negative counts double. Neurology does show that. So you have to really, really have an intention to remain more in eye awareness, to have the whole brain functioning in your patterning, which is sorting toward things in life, moving forward, and not being focused on what you're moving away from or what is outside of or away from or cut out of. See, where people want to cut out others, where they want to ostrich and not tell others and hide and not be able to speak the truth, there's an enormous lying going on, and those are people who really are eating themselves to death, God help us. But for the children, everyone, this is a person who's a child, and this is something which happened to them, and they're just doing the same to others. So it's sort of a trauma reenactment syndrome, that needs to be broken. But the left parietal lobe and the right parietal lobe of a child and a monk and a sage, there is very little activity going on there, and that's very common. That's the most common thing between a child's brain, who we consider to be an angel, and also saints around us. They have very little sort of activity going on in their parietal lobe, where they're comparing this and comparing that and comparing all sorts of things and having a lot of internal dialogue which over time can be chipped away to be shut off and reduced. But the left parietal lobe does connect us with the outside world by virtue of our language exchange and getting us up and moving us and sequencing movement. The right hemisphere is connected to more internal milieu by the the medial forebrain bundle, connecting the whole of the more right hemisphere and connecting to internal milieu more than the outside. And if the left hemispheres are being disconnected, sort of thing, a person cannot know that voices are coming from inside or outside, sort of thing. Our brain is meant to work both hemispheres functioning together more in a beautiful relation with each other, but in a gestalt, as we're talking. So the medial forebrain bundle goes to the right hemisphere, and it's more gestalt processing, and on-off is the left hemisphere, and that is connected more to the front and the back, and involves more thinking and then connecting your actions. And our brain really works by both hemispheres functioning, and wherever pleasure is, it creates more whole brain patterning, and where aversion it would have been, it caused limited brain function and primarily only right hemisphere brain function. And so when that can have occurred, executive guidance and the faculty to inspire creative influence of the future and these sort of things can be other than present as it should be. So interest, we've been talking about it, and pleasure create more whole brain functioning, and this is equivalent to you having your prefrontal cortex area engaged and involved in your behavior. But if you would have been averse in your thinking in the past, you could have only had limited mind function. You could not have been in the frontal cortex. It could have been difficult, really, to be able to transfer information. And scotophobia as a neurotransmitter can have been not regulated properly, and transfer of information from what occurred during the day can have not made its way to become present again for the following day, you see. So people can have just been stuck in the staid past, not having had easy ability to change anything much around. Certainly if they haven't had deep sleep and this sort of thing. But we can talk a bit more about this as we go. I thought we should really cover a little bit just the basics of whole brain functioning and eye awareness in our programming with each other. And the most important thing is you could just remember this, is that pleasure and interest creates whole brain functioning, and aversion and inhibition and avoidance creates limited mind function. Pleasure stimulates the septal region, stimulates the frontal cortex and the whole of the brain, and aversion causes limited mind function, stimulating the amygdala and tegmentum, and that kind of neurologically inhibited the septal region, causing no limbic emotional area connected to the frontal cortex, which is involved in planning and sequencing things. to be able to be involved in your plan and sequencing things, you have to feel pleasure and interest in yourself, and this is your playful self, and this is our original condition. Human beings are not designed to be put upon as people are doing to each other, and it's a very, very serious problem right now, and as it is even happening to my child Dakota, and I feel it's happening to you, and you to me. I feel as precious as I do my own son. Wherever interest and pleasure is, it creates whole brain functioning, and you've got your prefrontal cortex working nicely, beautiful, and you're in whole brain patterning, lovely. But where there was threat in the past, or where there could have been some sort of threat arisen, you could be aware. Eye awareness can be there now more, because why not have the whole of yourself versus having been indulgent, and that any threat, as you do know this, that can have been equivalent, sort of like a first viscerally to be satiated and satisfied, and that's equivalent to you wanting to stop something like that. Could be rejectedness or something, and something could be real about that. But how much do you do about that, and how much can you have triggered 10,000 times something afterward, even something that you imagined in the beginning? So the prefrontal cortex is perpetually supposed to be, as in your health, getting updated with information 8 to 10 times every second. And that's assisting you to plan and sequence things and to know what to do. But if you reversed, if you would have felt inhibited and you would have been focused on what's outside yourself, what's away, what you're moving away from, rather than what you're moving toward, and what is within you, what you have, what is your resource, what's your outcome, and stay with these things. It's enough. Your prefrontal cortex area then is being updated 8-10 times per second, and you're able to be in your executive guidance. You're able to have the faculty to inspire creative influence of the future. Otherwise, aversion could have caused limited mind function, and it's like a flame that was lit in the front of your brain, other than remains nice and lit and shiny. So inspiration that's fueled with beautiful emptiness and pause in your expiration, and pause on your empty breath, and lengthening of your inspiration, and these pauses are sort of the state of nirvana and emptying out of everything. And that's possible to live this way, and this is an original being, Lukey, and this is a state of mind, original being, Lukey, and this is a state of mind, original being, Lukey, and this is a state of mind, original